In just 3 minutes, a silent battlefield turned into a sea of fire. Flames erupted from a ruined warehouse, cut through thick snow, and tore apart both armored vehicles and reinforced positions. Each explosion was triggered with precision, each moment captured coldly from an overhead view. Every move, from evasive steps to instinctive reactions, was tracked and decisively neutralized without delay. In a war where even 1 second of hesitation can cost a life, what exactly is guiding these fast, sharp, and ruthless strikes? And how could a single FPV drone unit turn an abandoned structure into a fire trap for an entire combat system? Join military force to find out. During a routine drone patrol, a Ukrainian FPV pilot noticed something unusual: what looked like a Russian armored personnel carrier parked inside a deserted building. On the surface, it seemed like an easy target. But instead of launching an immediate strike, the operator made a strategic decision: to investigate the entire area before engaging. This careful approach turned out to be crucial. As the drone moved through the structure, another hidden vehicle came into view. Positioned deeper inside the hangar, it had been concealed from aerial view. It became clear that this wasn't just a one-off target. The building was likely used by Russian forces to shelter equipment or stage future attacks. The presence of multiple armored units suggested ongoing activity in the area, not just an abandoned position. The pilot quickly sent updated coordinates to the command center. In response, multiple FPV drones were dispatched to the area. Their arrival marked the beginning of a coordinated, multi-layered strike. This moment showed how even a single drone operator, when trained to think beyond the immediate target, can alter the scale and impact of an operation. This wasn't just a tactical hit. It was a calculated move that exposed a small but important Russian position, turning a hidden corner of the battlefield into a point of advantage. Reinforcement drones reached the hangar, and the strike plan took shape, with one platform holding watch, another committing to the hit, and a third staying ready to follow if the first impact did not finish the job. That division of roles is practical, because a parked armored carrier can survive a near miss, and battle damage only matters if it stops the vehicle from returning to action. The attack therefore unfolded in steps, with repeated runs intended to disable, not merely to tag, and each pass tightened the margin for the crew to react. As impacts accumulated, the vehicle inside the structure shifted from usable equipment to a damaged object that could no longer be restored quickly, which is the outcome that matters in a grinding war. The final drone then returned to confirm fire inside the building, and that confirmation served as a hard signal that the strike created lasting effects. A fire check is not a minor detail because it shows whether fuel or stored materials have ignited, and it helps prevent false claims that a target was destroyed when it was only shaken. It also tells the next crews what to do, because a burning hangar becomes a reference point for follow-on surveillance, possible secondary blasts, and any attempt to tow wrecks out. By the end of this sequence, the story is not only that armor was found and hit, but that careful scanning turned one sighting into a multi-target action with a clear battle damage report. That is why the hit inside the structure ends fast, yet it points forward, because elsewhere on the line, the same drone rhythm is already being used to force soldiers out of cover. The next action point is a live dugout, because aerial reconnaissance spots a worked-in position that still shows signs of people inside. The observing drone holds a steady orbit, so the camera can read the shelter as a small system with an entry lip, a shadowed corner, and short movement lanes. This is where the fight starts to look organized, because the first goal is not to chase a runner, but to confirm that the position is active and worth a strike. At close ranges on today's front, dugouts matter because they are where troops pause, reset, and wait for the next push. The reconnaissance platform does not rush, and it waits for a clean moment when the entrance line is visible and the terrain around it is mapped. That map sets the next phase, because the strike is designed to force a choice rather than to gamble on luck. Even before the hit, the drone's steady presence shapes behavior, because anyone inside knows that leaving later may be worse than leaving now. The first FPV hit is placed near the entrance edge, or the protective lip, because the goal is to break the shelter's role as a safe stopping point. A blast at the mouth changes the space instantly, since shock and dust push inward while the exit becomes the only clear path. Staying can mean disorientation in a tight hole, while leaving means stepping into open ground under a camera that is already waiting. That is why this moment is a control move, because the FPV is used to shape behavior instead of simply chasing movement. The overhead drone stays calm and keeps its angle, so the exit lanes remain visible even if the target tries to hug the ground. Once the detonation lands, the dugout stops being protection and turns into a trigger for exposure. If more movement is detected inside, the team can repeat the pressure because a second drone does not need new reconnaissance. When a soldier bursts out, the most dangerous second is the first attempt to settle behind a wall or broken corner, because half cover still leaves a clear angle from above. The observer drone does not dive or chase noise, and it holds the track so short dashes become readable patterns on the ground. A second strike drone arrives on timing, and it does not need a long search because the path is being updated live by the spotter. This is where escaping the dugout becomes the risk peak, since the target is exposed while still trying to orient and pick a route. The follow-on hit is aimed at the transition moment, when a shoulder or torso clears cover for just long enough to be engaged. In this sequence, seconds decide the outcome because the picture never breaks. The soldier's problem is that every option is visible, because even a pause to breathe becomes a fixed point the drone can measure. The dugout episode shows why the method repeats, because it uses simple roles that can be trained and scaled across many crews. One platform watches, one platform strikes, and another stays ready to launch if the target shifts, which turns isolated hits into a steady cycle of pressure. This tempo matters more than drama, because speed links detection, forcing action, and the follow-on strike into one chain. For the soldier on the ground, instinctive options narrow fast, since freezing, sprinting, or hugging cover can still produce a clear track for a camera that never blinks. For the unit running the drones, the key output is control of timing, because that control decides when a dugout becomes a trap. But when dugouts stop being reliable pause points, the defending side is pushed into more open spaces, and the winter forest becomes the next arena where the hunt continues. And that shift is important, because once troops leave earthworks, they are forced into trees, brush, and snow, where the next stage of tracking begins. The winter forest segment shows a different kind of contact, because the target is not a vehicle or a bunker, but a single survivor trying to vanish into brush. A reconnaissance UAV sweeps the tree line and catches a human shape tucked deep in bushes, and the lack of movement becomes the first clue. In cold terrain, stillness can feel like safety, because any sudden shift creates a pattern a camera can lock onto. The spotter does not rush the moment of discovery, and it holds altitude so the target cannot judge distance or direction. That steady orbit also builds a simple map, because gaps between trees and open patches mark the likely exit lanes. From above, the forest stops looking like cover and starts looking like a grid, where routes are limited by branches, snow, and ground. The crew keeps the frame wide, so the picture includes both the target and the spaces the target may try to reach. This patience matters because the goal is not speed, but continuity of observation. The tracking phase stays quiet, and the drone avoids forcing a reaction until the team is ready to turn sight into a strike. That restraint is tactical, because panic movement can break line of sight, while calm surveillance keeps options open. When the strike FPV launches from the nearest positions, the sound becomes the trigger that breaks the target's plan to stay invisible. The man runs because the threat feels close, yet that choice turns concealment into motion that can be measured. On winter ground, footprints, bent grass, and disturbed snow can reveal direction even when the body slips behind a trunk. The reconnaissance platform holds the track and updates the route in real time, so the chase becomes guided rather than guessed. At that point, the forest itself works like a funnel, because narrow paths and open strips push movement into predictable lines. Each time the target cuts left or hides behind a tree, the spotter adjusts its orbit to keep a top-down angle. That angle is decisive because branches block side views, but a vertical camera can regain the picture within seconds. The runner slows near thicker brush, and that hesitation creates a timing window the strike drone can exploit. A short pause is enough because the FPV only needs a moment when the body cannot change direction cleanly. The engagement ends once that moment appears because the strike platform enters on a line already set by the observer. What looks like a simple hit is actually a two-layer action, with one aircraft doing tracking and another delivering impact. The target tries to vary pace, yet speed shifts are still visible when the orbit remains steady and the path stays narrow. This is why escape becomes so hard in winter woods, because the fastest gap a human chooses is often the same gap the camera sees first. A stumble on roots or uneven ground can decide the outcome, since it locks the body into a straight line for a fraction of a second. The strike drone closes before the target can reach deeper shelter, and the forest offers no reset point once the chase is underway. In modern fighting, survival is often about breaking the drone's view, and here that exit never comes because attention seals the area. The result is a compact story of pressure, where one person is tracked from discovery to impact without a gap in observation. Cold conditions make this harsher because the environment is quieter and movement stands out, so time becomes exposure instead of protection. And when the hunted has no place left to hide, the next step of the campaign does not only target people, but also targets the vehicles that keep the front line breathing. The lineman direction sequence shifts from hunting individuals to hunting movement, because a reconnaissance drone identifies a supply vehicle positioned under camouflage near a forest route. From above, concealment still leaves signatures, since tire tracks, a cleared patch, and the net's geometry can expose where a truck is staged. The spotter stays patient and builds a clean picture, because misreading a decoy or an empty shelter wastes time in drones. Once the vehicle's purpose is confirmed, the mission becomes simple, because the goal is to stop transport of troops or ammunition before it reaches forward positions. A guided FPV strike is then used to break mobility, because disabling the cab, engine, or running gear can turn a working route into a stopped lane. In forest terrain, one disabled truck can matter more than one destroyed truck, because the road network is narrow and detours are limited by trees, mud, and choke points. This is why the strike is aimed at function, not spectacle, and a stalled vehicle can force the next drivers to slow, turn, or bunch up. That crowding effect is the hidden damage, because it creates predictable positions that stay visible from the same orbiting camera. A second sequence shows an even clearer outcome, because another similar target is hit around the fuel area, and the result becomes a large fire that is easy to confirm from distance. Fire matters on a battlefield because it signals a lasting loss and it complicates recovery, especially when towing teams and spare parts are under pressure. Smoke also becomes a marker because it draws attention back to the corridor and warns that the route is being watched. This kind of targeting fits the wider picture of contested operations in the Sloviansk-Lyman area, where repeated attacks and counterattacks make logistics both urgent and exposed. The point is not just one burning vehicle, because every resupply run is a timed link between rear storage and frontline staying power. When that link is cut, units at the edge are forced to ration fuel, delay rotations, and reduce movement, even if the trench line itself has not shifted. Ukraine's stated plan to buy millions of FPV drones supports this tempo-based approach, because high volume makes repeat strikes on the same road realistic. The same area also shows how small personal movement can become a target, because a quad bike or light vehicle can reveal itself through a lamp or careless timing. A single light source is a clean reference point at night or in shadow, because darkness hides shapes, but it does not hide a fixed glow. If a drone is already airborne, that mistake compresses the timeline because the observer does not need to search and can immediately cue a strike path. This is why light discipline becomes battlefield behavior, since turning on a lamp can function like a signal flare for anyone watching from above. Taken together, the truck hit, the fuel fire, and the exposed rider build one message because the forest no longer absorbs errors and movement creates signatures. When logistics and personal mobility are pulled into the strike zone, forward shelters become more isolated. And that is when drones shift into the next phase of systematically erasing hiding sites with intent. That transition is the real warning, because once movement is choked, the next targets are the places soldiers still believe can save them. The next phase after the road strikes is systematic shelter removal, because drones treat houses, dugouts, and trench mouths as targets that must stop working. A reconnaissance UAV moves along the line in a scan pattern, and it marks each site that shows fresh tracks, disturbed ground, or recent use. The aim is not to film ruins, because it is to find places still used for rest, storage, and short staging before assaults. Analysts have warned that in heavy drone environments, large dugouts and concentrated strongpoints become easier to locate and harder to use as reliable cover. Once a shelter is tagged, the strike plan focuses on the entrance area, since doors and lips are where protection turns into exposure. An FPV drone hits the mouth or the roof edge, and the purpose is to damage the structure and disrupt anyone inside without a firefight. If the first detonation does not finish the job, another FPV follows quickly, and it attacks the same site from a new angle. This is how pressure becomes continuous, because every follow-on launch reduces the time defenders have to reset. The controlling detail is the overhead camera, because the observer does not leave after the first strike and keeps the picture stable. When a soldier runs out, the drone view records the line of movement, and that line becomes a guide for the next hit. Instinctive reactions do not help, because sprinting, freezing, or ducking behind a wall still creates a visible pattern from above. Trench bends and shortcuts can fail if the orbit remains steady, since each turn can be tracked quickly. Return fire can happen, yet muzzle flash and sudden motion can expose direction at the worst moment. The result is a compressed decision window, because the target must pick a move fast while the next drone is being queued. Digital tools have been reported to cut strike timelines sharply in some units, which fits the idea that finding and hitting can happen in minutes. Under that pressure, a shelter is not attacked once and forgotten, because it can be revisited until it is no longer usable. A cratered entrance removes safe access, a collapsed roof removes storage space, and repeated hits turn a trench segment into a danger point. This is why the operation looks like deletion, because the goal is to erase the function of a position, not only to cause casualties. The attacker's discipline shows in role separation, because one platform observes, one platform strikes, and another is held for the moment the target breaks cover. Military observers have described this as a reconnaissance strike pattern, where small UAS and precision effects connect into a repeatable loop. On the ground, fear pushes people toward the nearest object that looks solid, yet that object can become a dead end once the drone keeps seeing it. And when daylight observation has already locked the ground, the campaign does not stop at sunset, because the next shift begins with thermal imaging. Night used to be a time for soldiers to regroup, sleep, or reposition safely. But in Ukraine, that idea no longer holds. With thermal drones scanning the battlefield non-stop, the dark hours have become some of the most dangerous for Russian forces. These drones use heat, not light, to detect targets. That means anything alive, whether a person or machine, glows brightly against the cold environment, even if it's hiding behind cover or inside a trench. This technology removes the one advantage night once offered: concealment. Even minimal movements, like adjusting position or changing guard, can trigger a detection. Once spotted, it takes only minutes for FPV drones to follow. The handoff between reconnaissance and attack is tight. There's little room for error, and even less for reaction. The constant surveillance also wears down the enemy's morale. Soldiers now understand they are being watched every hour, including when they expect to rest. There is no reset. There is no pause. This 24-hour exposure creates exhaustion, confusion, and a growing fear of being hit at any moment. That kind of pressure slowly breaks down unit cohesion, leaving forces less organized and more vulnerable with each passing night. And as weather conditions worsen, the effectiveness of thermal vision only increases. Cold air improves the contrast between warm targets and the background, making detection even faster and more reliable. Ukrainian operators are learning how to use these conditions as force multipliers. The Ukrainian military has turned thermal drones into one of their strongest battlefield tools. These systems do not rely on weather, light, or terrain. They work through fog, cold, and complete darkness. A single heat source, even a hidden one, is enough to reveal a position. The moment a soldier leaves a dugout or a driver switches on a vehicle, the target becomes visible and vulnerable. What makes this even more effective is the seamless coordination between drone types. Thermal drones scan, record, and track. Then FPVs take off from nearby positions to strike. Russian troops often don't know they've been targeted until the final second, when it's too late to move or fight back. This is not just a tactical advantage, it's a system that denies the enemy the ability to operate freely at night. The battlefield is no longer divided between day and night. Instead, it's fully controlled, hour by hour, by unmanned systems that never rest. The traditional safety of darkness has turned into a high-risk zone for any force that relies on silence or stillness to survive. When every dimension of space and time is under constant control, FPV drones are no longer a supporting tool. They have become the main force reshaping the front line. Ukraine has built a full-spectrum drone warfare system that links reconnaissance, jamming, precision strikes, and post-attack assessment into one continuous cycle. FPV drones are not just damaging equipment. They are disrupting logistics, destroying bunkers, and shaking the confidence of Russian forces on the ground. Because they are cheap, mobile, and deadly, FPVs are filling roles once reserved for traditional air power. Their ability to operate at low altitude, day and night, gives Ukraine a major edge in tactical flexibility and surprise. More than just a tool, these drones have become a central force on the battlefield. They are reshaping how war is fought, step by step, by turning constant visibility and fast reaction into a dominant advantage. In this war, Ukraine is not just surviving. It is setting the pace of modern combat by turning FPV drone warfare into a game-changing reality. War reveals the limits of diplomacy, and peace reveals the cost of war. At Military Force, we explore how modern conflicts unfold, not just through firepower, but through strategy, history, and consequence. Subscribe now to Military Force and join those who seek to understand warfare, not to glorify it, but to learn from it.